2024, and you are listening to the 91st episode of this podcast. Thomas Jefferson said, "We do not have government by the majority. We have government by the majority who participate." If you support what we're doing here at the Conservative American Message, you can show us your support by giving a 5-star rating and by following or subscribing wherever you listen. To stay up to date on everything we're doing, please follow us on social media at the Conservative American Message on Instagram and Facebook. It's been a hot minute. I have been so busy with life that this whole home stretch of the presidential campaigns really got away from me. Between my job that actually pays the bills and my third child being born, I kind of have to say I don't really feel that bad about the lack of content over the last few months. Sorry. Luckily, some really cool people wanted to be on the show, which helped me ahead of time to avoid completely abandoning you guys. This campaign season has just been so weird and very unconventional. Times have changed a lot, even in just the last 4 years. Podcasts now have more influence than the cable news. Assassinations have become no big deal and just a regular part of running for president. And of course, the debates that once made up the minds of millions of Americans have divulged into a circus that has virtually no impact. But it's not all bad. We got to see some cool interviews, whether it was Trump and Vance on the Nelk Boys, Theo Vaughn, and Joe Rogan, or Kamala's appearance on the sex advice show Call Her Daddy. It's been a real whirlwind, and honestly there have been some entertaining moments, but it all comes down to this. Here we are. Tomorrow is the big day. The most consequential presidential election, certainly in my lifetime. Are we going to pull it off? Will Trump save our nation, or will Kamala continue us down the path of destruction? Will America survive either result? Well, the answer to all of these very important questions is, I don't know. I just don't know. I know that many of you don't always listen to these episodes the day they come out, so you might already know the results and the aftermath, but just bear with me here. Let's break it down. I believe that Donald Trump will win the popular vote. I think a majority of Americans on a broad scale will be voting for Donald Trump. I'm not certain, but I feel pretty good about it. It's just a gut thing. As we all know, a presidential candidate needs at least 270 electoral votes to win. Every state has its own number based on its population. Now, I know that polls are a pretty ridiculous measure of the actual voters, but it's all we got. So let me break down my electoral map that I posted last night on Facebook and Instagram. There's certainly no sponsorship or anything, but just so you know, since 2016, I've been using 270towin.com for making maps to predict all these different election scenarios. Now, I have based this pretty heavily off of the polling. I think all of the blue states are strongly blue, and I would doubt any of them unexpectedly go for Trump. These states who I expect to fully support Kamala Harris and get her to 226 electoral votes are California, Oregon, Washington, Minnesota, Illinois, Virginia, Colorado, New Mexico, New York, Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, Hawaii, and the swamp itself, of course, the District of Columbia, which is not a state, but yes, they have 3 electoral votes. Trump's situation is slightly more unstable. While I feel very confident in most of the red states, I have worries with a few. I feel pretty good about Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, Alaska, North and South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, West Virginia, South Carolina, and Florida. So, all of those will get him to 219. So Trump's at 219, Kamala is at 226. Now, as a caveat, Maine and Nebraska actually have what they call a split vote, so not all of their electoral votes have to go to the same candidate, but it essentially amounts to my prediction being that the district that includes Omaha and Nebraska will go blue, and the most rural district of Maine will go red, so it's basically a wash as far as these split states go. Unfortunately, I think that the Harris campaign has a lock on those blue states I listed, where those red states, I'm fairly confident, but there could be an upset somewhere. I do think that if it was red in 2020, I don't really see how that could have changed, and all of those states fall into that category, that they voted for Trump 4 years ago. Generally, I feel pretty confident in calling it there at 226 Kamala and 219 for Donald. Here's where it gets a little tricky. Georgia and Arizona. I'm going to count both for Trump, but the margin is razor thin. It's so close that they are nearly toss-ups, but I have faith in the people of Arizona. They have lived with this border crisis firsthand, and they want to see change. If Trump can win there, that would bring him up to 230, taking the lead. Georgia, again, is just so close, but Trump is slightly ahead in the polling, and he won nearly every county in 2020, although he lost the state. So if we give him Georgia, that brings his total to 246. I think that both of these states are within reach for Donald, but it really makes me nervous. An additional concern is that both Georgia and Arizona went blue in 2020 under the most extreme scrutiny of election fraud, if you remember. If there were any shenanigans in 2020, which, let's be real, of course there were, then that would mean we should expect even more this time around. So while I think that Trump wins these two in an honest election, we can't be sure that that's what we're going to be getting. North Carolina has also come under some scrutiny, with a slight edge for Trump in the polls, but something tells me that the complete lack of support from FEMA after this disastrous Hurricane Helene will be enough to keep them red, especially when they were red back in 2020. So that brings Trump up to 262. So the real swing states that will more than likely decide the entire election are Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. These 4 states hold the 50 electoral votes that could change everything. It should be noted that all 4 of them went blue in 2020. Starting with the least consequential, Nevada. Nevada has only 6 electoral votes, which would only bring Trump up to 268, painfully close. Nevada went blue in 2020 and in 2016, but Trump leads by less than a percentage point in the recent polls. It's almost too close to call, but since he doesn't need it, I'm going to give it to Kamala, bringing her to 232. Trump only has to win one of these last 3 to go all the way, so let's take a look at Wisconsin. He had it in 2016, lost it in 2020. Will he get it back? Well, the polls say no, giving Harris a less than 1% advantage. So I'm going to give her Wisconsin also. That brings her to 242. Michigan, same story. He had it in 2016, lost it in 2020. But Harris is leading by an even wider margin in the polls right now, so I'd say we can kiss Michigan goodbye. Like they always say, it comes down to Pennsylvania. Trump is at 262 electoral votes. Harris has 257. Polls have Trump winning by the smallest margin of any state, with a 1/10 of a percentage point in Pennsylvania. This is another one that he had in 2016 but lost in 2020. In the 2024 presidential election, I am predicting Donald Trump to be the victor by winning Pennsylvania and the country with 281 electoral votes to Harris's 257. And here's why. On July 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania, Donald Trump was shot. That attempt on his life will definitely have the largest impact on this election compared to any other issue. I'm sorry, but I don't care if the media ignored it. Nobody believes them anyway. I don't care that the far left are making the ridiculous and sickening claim that Trump orchestrated the whole thing and it was just for show. Those people are already Harris lunatics. The real American people who go to work every day and care about the real issues like the economy and crime and our gosh darn freedom, those people watched as Donald Trump went from a really good candidate to a legitimate American hero. He has now spilled his own blood for this country. He's not going to back down, and Americans know it. The left knows it. The real Americans who populate most of this country, including in the state of Pennsylvania, will carry Donald Trump to victory. I believe it. At least, I really want to believe it. But it's not just as simple as making maps and looking at polls and having these gut feelings. It takes you and me actually making our voices heard. We need to go out and vote. We have to not only vote, but round up all of our family and friends and anyone we know, anyone we can think of to bring along to vote. We have to actually talk to people about this stuff, even though it's extremely awkward and you can't even schedule your own dentist appointment. We have to get controversial, guys. Share that post on Facebook. Put that thing on your Instagram story. Let everyone know Donald Trump is your man. You don't care what those libtards have to say about it anyway. I know you don't want to become like me and make political posts all the time being labeled as some crazy conservative kid, but this is different. The fate of this country hangs in the balance with this election. Do not be ashamed. Do not be the silent majority. Make your voice heard. For all of the people who might be shocked and comment or message you out of anger, there may be that one person who follows you, maybe someone you barely even know, that could be emboldened by your opinion. You may be surprised how many people actually respect your opinion. I know I am every day. This is so much bigger than politics, people. So let's get it done and bring back another 4 years of Donald Trump and another 4 years of prosperity. By the way, this election is about far more than just the presidency. You have to make sure and vote for Republicans up and down the ballot. I would urge you to do your research and find out about your local officials, which judges need to be retained, which amendments should be passed, and what to vote for on bond issues. If you're unsure about any of that, regardless of where you live, send me a DM, and I would love to help in any way I can. For my local listeners, I have voter guides already created that you can have if you get in touch with me. I'm not just trying to tell you what to do. I want to inform you about what your vote will actually mean. But above all, go vote. I appreciate all of you who have voted early to get the ball rolling already. Please never assume that even in the reddest state, in the reddest district, in the reddest county, and in the reddest city, that your vote doesn't matter. Apathy is how this whole thing dies. Participate. That's all I have time for. Were you offended by this podcast? Good. Thanks for listening, guys. I really appreciate you all. Have a great week and stay conservative.